When a divine covenant fractures, the devastation extends far beyond a broken promise. It shatters the legal and spiritual foundation of an entire nation. In the 8th century BCE, the northern kingdom of Israel lived under the reign of Jeroboam II. At the center of this treaty was the foundational Sinai covenant formula: I will be your God, and you will be my people. The Sinai Agreement functioned as a strictly conditional, legally binding contract demanding exclusive loyalty. In this geopolitical framework, the worship of foreign idols constituted an act of high treason. Hosea's marriage to Gomer functions as a performative oracle, a living sign act dramatizing Israel's spiritual prostitution. The message is delivered through the names of Hosea's 3 children. The first son is named Jezreel. The name means God scatters, a direct death sentence for the kingdom's military power, which would soon be broken in the valley of Jezreel. The second child, a daughter, is named Lo Ruhamah, meaning no mercy. With this name, Yahweh publicly and judicially revokes his maternal compassion, an attribute explicitly promised during the Exodus from Egypt. The third child's name marks the absolute nadir of the relationship, Lo Ami, translating to not my people. This name legally dissolves the Sinai formula entirely. This diagram isolates the Hebrew phrasing God uses alongside that final name. He declares, I am not Aa to you. This wording is a direct, terrifying reversal of the I am revelation given to Moses at the burning bush. By withdrawing his name, God formally issues a decree of divorce, withdrawing the covenant protection he initiated at Sinai. Because Israel's identity depended solely on their relationship with Yahweh, withdrawing the divine name results in a total loss of their national being. By unnaming himself to them, God effectively dissolves their existence. Hosea chapters 2 and 3 follow a covenant cycle. It begins with the Reeb, a formal covenant lawsuit, where children testify against their mother. The core sin is extreme ingratitude. Israel takes Yahweh's covenant gifts, grain, wine, and oil, and attributes them to the pagan god Baal. The text diagnoses this as mimetic desire. Israel chases the political alliances of neighboring empires like Assyria and Egypt, mimicking their fertility cults in a search for national security. This behavior fractures Israel's relational identity. They have forgotten the true source of their existence, severing the connection between their people and their God. The cycle moves to its next phase as the suzerain vassal curses are formally activated against the offending nation. God's judgment in these verses operates as a systematic unmaking of creation itself. The text outlines reversals of the Genesis and Exodus narratives. God threatens to strip the nation naked, removing the Edenic covering and returning Israel to the day of birth. The fertile land is threatened with total desolation, transforming into a parched wasteland that carries a lethal threat of thirst. The agricultural economy faces withdrawal. Yahweh promises to extract the grain, the new wine, the wool, and the flax from the markets. God executes the legal consequences of the broken treaty, returning the bride of Sinai to the pre-creation, pre-Exodus chaos from which he originally saved her. Then, Hosea 2:14 introduces the structural pivot of the book: measured tone. The text uses a performative contradiction. After listing capital offenses, the word therefore introduces divine seduction instead of execution. Yahweh engages in a kenosis of language. The holy God stoops to the vocabulary of the brothel, utilizing the language of illicit seduction to truthfully allure Israel back. The wilderness undergoes a transformation. The exact location previously designated as a site of death is recast as a liminal space for a second honeymoon. This reveals a God who refuses to let wrath have the last word. He weaponizes his own justified judgment into a mechanism for relational renewal. Before the marriage can resume, the very vocabulary of the covenant requires purification. This breakdown illustrates the linguistic exorcism of Hosea 2:16. God deletes a title from the Hebrew language. The term Baali, a coercive, hierarchical obligation tainted by pagan deities, is replaced with Ishi. This signifies mutual belonging and intimate partnership, redefining the covenant. The new betrothal is built on hesed, unilateral, overflowing, loyal covenant love that relies on God's attributes, not on human perfection. The goal of this union is yada, experiential marital knowing. It proves that divine revelation is relational rather than purely intellectual. God destroys the transactional language of Sinai. He refuses to function as a pagan fertility god bought with rote obedience. He demands to be known as a husband. While Hosea's prophecies declare grace in poetry, the third chapter forces the prophet to pay for it in harsh physical reality. Hosea returns to the market and purchases his wife. The specific price recorded is 15 shekels of silver, alongside a homer and lethek of barley. This transaction represents the brutal socio-economic reality of Hosea's life. He likely empties his entire savings to buy back an adulterous wife at the degraded price of a slave. The barley carries heavy symbolic weight. It is the exact grain prescribed in the Book of Numbers for the bitter adultery test. This transaction literalizes divine hesed. Grace is not cheap sentimentality. It requires the husband to unilaterally absorb the humiliating cost of the betrayal. Looking back at the complete covenant cycle, the narrative reaches its conclusion: the eschatological reversal. The children's names reverse. The legal divorce of Lo Ami is rewritten into Ami, my people, and Lo Ruhama drops its negative prefix to become Ruhama, mercy. And the first child, Jezreel, completes a masterful wordplay. The exact valley that served as a judgment, meaning God scatters, flips to a promise of restoration, meaning God sows. This transformation of the covenant logic is driven by God's own initiative. He does not wait for Israel to demonstrate behavioral repentance. The application of grace creates the conditions necessary for them to return. This is a unilateral resurrection of a dead covenant. Hosea's nightmare proves the biblical covenant is not a fragile contract managed by fear. It operates as an indissoluble union, sustained entirely by the relentless, wounded love of the husband.